Precheck, mobile passport, global entry, clear. So many choices. What should I choose? Hey y'all, it's Christy, the Gen X Gypsy, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about the confusing differences between the programs that the U.S. Customs Border Patrol put out several years ago that can help expedite your process through airport security and customs. I'm going to go over all of those programs, plus we're going to talk about Clear, and we're going to talk about the Real ID. I'm going to give you information about each of the programs and my experiences with some of these programs. Hopefully it can help you decide if you need to get one of them, or maybe you don't really need to invest in any of them. The first one we're going to talk about today is the one that is probably the most popular and the one that you see the most often when you go into the airport, and that is TSA Precheck. When this first came out, I ran, not walked, to my closest location in order to sign up for TSA Precheck. At that time, I was probably flying 3 to 4 times a year, and I was flying from a fairly large airport. I chose to do TSA Precheck because honestly, I hate having to take all of my crap out of my carry-on, taking off my shoes, and that whole process of going through security. I don't really mind waiting in a line. I can be a fairly patient person most of the time. For me, it was more the just pain in the patootie of having to take everything out and then put it back on or repack it. That was my sole reason for getting TSA Precheck. So what are the benefits of TSA Precheck? Well, if you fly at all, you have probably seen the signs when you step up to security that say TSA Precheck, and you'll see people going into that line. And I know that airlines were randomly giving out TSA Precheck on tickets sometimes to passengers that didn't necessarily already have the paid for TSA Precheck. And I know this because my mom lucked out and got it a couple of times on her tickets. So she was able to go through the pre-check line without having to go through regular security. We still haven't figured out if she got it based on her age at the time or if it was just something that was randomly happening. In the meantime, she has also applied and gotten her own paid for TSA Precheck because she enjoyed the process so much better when she got to go through it as a freebie, I guess. So the benefits of TSA Precheck are that you have your own line to go through security. When you go through that line and you get to the screening process, you don't have to remove your shoes, you don't have to take your electronics out of your bag, you don't have to take your liquids bag out of your bag. And I'm assuming at this point, because they are asking for regular passengers to take their food out of their carry-on bag, that when you go through TSA Precheck, you don't have to remove your food from your bag either. They generally don't even have the gray bins at the TSA Precheck for you to even put stuff in there. They just want you to put your carry-on on the conveyor belt and it just goes through without having to do anything. And then you just walk through the scanner thing. Usually it's the one, you can't see my hands, they're getting cut off, but it's usually the one where you have to stand with your legs spread and your arms up and that does the little circly thing. I have traveled with friends where I've gone through the TSA Precheck and they've had to go through regular security, and I am easily done anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15, sometimes 20 minutes before they've gotten through security. So it does save you a tremendous amount of time. But like I said, for me, it was more of an issue of just not wanting to have to pull all of the crap out of your carry-on and then shove it all back in, and just the stress and a little bit of anxiety of people waiting on you to do all of that. This way, it's just done. How much does TSA Precheck cost, and who is it appropriate for? TSA Precheck is $85, and that is for 5 years. Breaks down to $17 a year. Now, if you are someone who travels from a fairly large airport on a regular basis, or let's say you travel once or twice a year and you are going through a fairly large airport, it would probably be worth it to go ahead and get the TSA Precheck. I think the ease of getting through security that much quicker and with that much less hassle really is worth it to me. to add $17 per trip. And if you travel more than once a year, the amount just keeps breaking down. The one drawback is if you are not flying from a larger airport, you don't get all of the benefits of the TSA Precheck. I fly sometimes from my small little town. We have 2 regional airports that are each about 45 minutes to an hour away, and occasionally I will fly out of those airports. Now they're so tiny that getting through security is not really a hassle anyway, but you don't get the benefits of using your TSA Precheck. The only benefit you get is to leave your shoes on. They give you a little card that says TSA Pre, and you hand it to the person when you walk through the screener that you get to keep your shoes on. Otherwise, you still have to pull all your stuff out of your carry-on and put it in the gray bins and go through that hassle of repacking. If you only travel out of smaller regional airports, it's probably not worth it to you because you're not really getting any benefit. I mean, leaving your shoes on, I don't know, that just doesn't seem worth $17 a year for me. I mean, it may for you. Another thing to know about TSA Precheck is if you're traveling with a child who is 12 years old or younger, they will get to go through the TSA Precheck line with you. So that is TSA Precheck. The next one we're going to talk about is Global Entry. That's my card. I'm kind of hiding all the personal information just, because it's the internet. I got my Global Entry when I started to go back and forth to Nicaragua, and I knew that I was going to start traveling a little bit more internationally. It is a little more expensive than TSA Precheck. It's $100 for 5 years. However, when you have Global Entry, one of the benefits is that you get all of your TSA Precheck benefits with the Global Entry, meaning you will still get to go through the TSA Precheck line at security when you are going to the airport. The main benefit for Global Entry is expedition when you arrive in the United States going through customs. Basically, all you have to do is you walk past
those long, very long lines
at customs all the way to where you have the pretty little Global Entry sign. You walk up to a kiosk, it scans your face, it prints out a little paper ticket that you take up to the customs agent. You hand them your passport, you hand them the little paper ticket, they look at that, they may ask you a question or two, and you're done. It's amazing! After years of standing in line for hours at customs, well, maybe not always hours, but pretty long lines. I mean, it's a good 45 minutes to an hour to go through a normal customs line, depending on the time of year and where you're traveling from and how many other airplanes have arrived at the same time. The only downside I have found, and it really isn't Global Entry's fault at all, is if you are checking baggage when you are coming back into the country, after you are cleared through customs, you still have to wait for your luggage to come off of the conveyor belt. You're going to have to stand in line to recheck your baggage to your destination in the United States. So it's fantastic if you are only traveling with a carry-on. Probably something I will do more so in the future. I was using Global Entry to go back and forth to Nicaragua, and I was almost always traveling with a full suitcase to bring stuff back in. I would get done with customs and I would sit and wait and wait and wait for usually 45 minutes to an hour for my luggage to come through the carousel, and then have to go recheck it before I could go to my gate to get to my next plane. So a lot of times my entire layover was eaten up just for rechecking the bags. If you're traveling with carry-on, you won't have to deal with the waiting to get your luggage off of the carousel. You will have to go wait in another line to go through security again to get to your next gate. And unfortunately, I have not been through any airports that had TSA Precheck available for that particular portion of going through customs. So plan on waiting through that line as well. The lesson here is to not have a short layover when you are coming in from another country and going to another destination in the United States, whether you're checking a bag or you're doing carry-on, because you are still going to have to wait in a line at some point. Applying for TSA Precheck and Global Entry are very similar, and I will post the links below that you can use to go to the application process. Once you've sent in your application for whichever program you decide to go with, you will have to set up an appointment to actually physically go to a location in order for them to do an interview and to take your fingerprints. I believe there are more locations for the TSA Precheck interviews than there are for the global entry interviews. The global entry interviews, you have to be at an international airport in order to go through that interview process. What a lot of people will do is they will arrange when they're arriving on an international flight to just be able to go and get that interview done at that time. Otherwise, if you live a pretty far distance from an international airport, or maybe there's only one airport in your state that does these interviews, it might be a little bit more of a hassle to get somewhere. In North Carolina, I believe the Charlotte airport is the only airport that is available for doing the global entry interviews. That's kind of a pain in the butt for us because we're like a 6.5, 7-hour drive away from Charlotte. So it's not necessarily convenient to a lot of people sometimes. I was lucky in that I was still living in Portland at the time that I got my global entry, and Portland is an international airport where the interview process is available. Once my application was approved, you go in and you set up an appointment, and at the time that I got my global entry, which was I think about 3 or 4 years ago, it was about a 6-month wait to get an interview at the airport. The TSA Precheck was a lot faster. I want to say when I applied for the TSA Precheck, which was 5 years ago because I just got my renewal notice, that was only like about 2 or 3 weeks out for me to get an interview there. And that interview did not take place at the airport. When you go in for these interviews, you will need to take in your ID and or your passport, depending which you are getting. They will take your fingerprints. They'll ask you a couple of questions. That's pretty much it. Literally, I don't think either of my interviews lasted more than 5 minutes. It was a super easy process. Once you're done with your interview, they will give you a piece of paper that has your known traveler ID number on it at that time, but later you will get mailed your official piece of paper for the TSA Precheck, or you will get your global entry card in the mail as well. I do think it's interesting that they give you a global entry card because I haven't had to show it to anybody yet. I think the main benefit of having the card with you is that if you are coming in from Canada or Mexico, you can use it to get into the expedited lines on the Canadian side or the Mexico side. Now, when you are going to Canada, you cannot use your global entry to gain access to their Nexus line, is what I believe they use for their expedited services. I think with your global entry card, you can apply for the expedited Sentry system, which is what you use to go into Mexico more quickly, but you can't just use your global entry card for either of those countries to go into their expedited customs lines. You can only use it when you are coming into the United States from those countries. Don't forget to check your credit cards to see if one of the benefits they offer is reimbursing you for the expense for TSA Precheck and or global entry. I know there are a significant number of travel credit cards out there that will reimburse you for the expense of one or both of those programs. So make sure you check that out because you don't want to leave $85 or $100 sitting on the table with your credit card company. The third option with the Border Patrol's Trusted Traveler program is the mobile passport. And that is basically an app that you can put on your phone that will help you get through customs a little bit faster. So the way it works is that within the app, you will fill out a profile which will have your passport information and all the other information that they want to know. All it really saves you is the time in the customs line where you would either physically fill out the paperwork at the customs. Most of them have the kiosk now that you stand and you answer all the questions, and then you go stand in line again, and then you hand your passport to the agent. All you're really saving is the time that you would be putting that information into that specific kiosk. It is only available at 29 airports and I think 4 seaports in the United States. So it's not super widely available. But it is free and you don't have to fill out an application or go through an interview process. If you are someone who doesn't travel internationally very often, it's a great option for you because it does save a little bit of time. It'll probably help you move ahead of the line like a good maybe 15 minutes. It's something to keep in mind. I will have that link below as well. And that gets us to Clear. Now, I hadn't heard about Clear until really recently because none of the airports that I go through for initial security has Clear. It's fairly new to me. I think it's only been around for like 2 or 3 years. It is a privately owned company. It is not associated with the Border Patrol or TSA at all. Clear cost $179 per year. And the benefit to using Clear is that it gets you to the head of the regular security line, not the TSA Precheck security line, just the regular security line. You still have to take off your shoes and take your liquids out and all of the other things that are required for regular security. So basically, you're paying $179 a year to cut in line. That's what I get from it. I don't really see any benefit to it, but maybe for certain people who are, flying through those 38 airports that it's available in, it's a benefit to them. I mean, $85 for 5 years or $895 for 5 years? I mean, that's a whole international ticket. Seems like a no-brainer to me. The last thing I want to touch on really briefly, because it doesn't really have anything to do with getting through security quicker, but it is something that we need to be paying attention to, is the real ID. And I know there's been a lot of questions because the timelines have been constantly changed and everybody's like, well, when is it happening? Is it not happening? If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about when I talk about the real ID, it's a law that was passed by Congress in 2005 to set standards for IDs. Before then, all the states can kind of do their own thing with your state issued IDs. Congress thought that after 9/11, it would be better for us all to have a better standardization for those IDs that we get from the state. When they made that law, it was decided that at some point you would need to have a standardized ID in order to get onto a plane to fly anywhere in the United States. And that is what they are calling the real ID. I believe it's going to have a little star on the ID. I didn't get one the last time I renewed my ID. I do have a passport, and that's pretty much what I use almost every time I fly, whether I'm flying domestically or internationally. I just feel like it's easier for me to keep track of because it's bigger and there's more of it. My ID, I feel, is so small and, can easily get lost or slide through something. I don't know. So the Real ID was supposed to be in place a number of years ago, but many states had challenges getting their system set up for the standardization for the Real ID. So the dates got pushed back, and I believe at one point it was supposed to start in 2021. However, 2020 hit and things got pushed back again. So as of right now, you don't have to have a Real ID to fly until May 3rd of 2023. I don't know why they couldn't do like the 1st or the 15th or the 30th. Why they chose the 3rd? It's probably like a Monday or something. Who knows? Just seems like such a random date. Keep that in mind. If you don't have a Real ID yet, you have close to 2 years to get one, and you're going to need one to fly, either that or a passport. So which of these programs is best for you? Well, clearly that's going to decide on how much you travel or how much it bugs you to go through security, or you want to be able to go through security faster. For me, the global entry made sense, and it's only $15 more than the TSA Precheck. It is a little bit more of a hassle to get to wherever the interview is going to be held, but that's something you should weigh out for yourself. TSA Precheck, definitely think it's worth the $85 if you travel even once a year. I think that extra $17 to just get through security faster, for me, it's worth every penny of it. I don't know, Christy, $17, that can buy me a meal on the airplane. And you would be right. It's up to you. Meal on the airplane, faster through security. It's a personal choice. The one thing I do think, and this is entirely my opinion, is that I think Clear is a ripoff. If you can get TSA Precheck for $85 for 5 years, I don't see any reason why you would ever need to spend $179 a year to cut in line to get to the front of security. I just don't think it's worth it. Hopefully this has helped clarify the differences between TSA Precheck and global entry and what the hell this clear stuff is for you. And hopefully it's clarified whether you're going to decide to get one or none of these. If you do have one or more, or you have clear and you have a really good reason why you think clear is amazing and that people should consider it, I'd love to hear in the comments below. If you haven't had an opportunity to hit that like button yet, I would certainly appreciate it. It does make a difference. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Always starts running right when I want to film. Yeah, I know. I should be able to divide 5 into 85 in my head, and I probably could, but it'll take longer than it takes for me to get my phone out and do it here. Oh, sorry. My neighbor is walking through my yard.